I'm Dr. David Jansen.
I'm Michael Sanders.
I am Noelle Thrasher.
And welcome to the Highlander Podyssey. Today we have English 3930 students Mianna Lotshaw and Sierra Spencer. They'll be talking about the art of writing fan fiction and analyzing its context in relation to the original works they draw from, as well as their own personal experiences discovering the world of fan fiction for themselves and what it means to them. One of my favorite highlights is toward the end, where I asked them their thoughts on their favorite side characters that people made fan fictions for. And their answers were quite insightful. You'll have to stick it out to the end to check it out. All right, let's get into it.
Hello, welcome to the Podyssey, brought to you by the Nobodies of Gordon State's English department. We're going to be talking about fanfiction today.
Okay, we're going to be talking about fanfiction today, as Sierra introduced. To get to know our hosts today, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Mianna Lotshaw. I'm a junior here at Gordon State and an English major. One of my favorite things about fanfiction, and the reason I was drawn to work on this episode, was how much fanfiction has been involved in my life. I've read it from a pretty young age, honestly, and it's been a great way of an escape from reality and just to further the stories that I've read or watched and explore them more. Some of my favorite memories about fanfiction is me and a few of my friends, we would go and search for the strangest or weirdest fanfiction ideas and then try to act them out in sort of a dramatic play format. And we do this at 1:30 in the morning, and it's just one of my favorite memories that I've had.
Hello, I'm Sierra. Fanfiction's had a pretty impressive impact on my life too. I stumbled on Naruto fanfiction before I ever watched Naruto. The fanfiction actually made me want to watch Naruto, and that made me want to become good at writing because I wanted to write super cool Naruto fanfiction too. It's really safe to say that I'm only here majoring in English right now because of fanfiction, between that Naruto fanfiction and watching other fanfiction writers online as I was growing up talking about their journey into college, getting English degrees. They made me want to pursue this.
All right, so now that we've met everyone that will be involved in this episode, like we said before, we're going to talk about fan fiction. More specifically, we're going to dip into a long-standing debate on whether the question, is fan fiction a legitimate art form?
It's probably easy to guess where we stand on that, but let's take our time and settle in a bit. Let's have a chat about fan fiction. First, we're going to talk about what fan fiction can do. And it's hard to talk about that because fan fiction can do a lot. It can do so many things, I can't possibly list them all. Fan fiction can explore relationship dynamics, it can explore side characters, it can go into story events from different angles ranging between it fits right into the story as you know it, or these medieval knights are getting coffee from a Starbucks in Arizona. It has the range. And in a meta sense, fanfiction could also include author's notes and organizational tags. The tagging systems help readers find exactly what they're looking for while ignoring everything they're not. It's more easy to know what you're getting into with a fanfiction than it is, picking a book up off of a bookstore shelf. It's more important online to know what you're reading in a fanfiction than knowing exactly what's going to be in a book.
While fanfiction can do a lot of things, there are some limitations, especially in the area of money and copyright. It's a legal gray area. Because you are using someone else's characters, you're using their intellectual property, and they technically could sue you, this isn't as big of an issue today as it used to be. But for example, writing fan fiction of Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire could easily land you in hot water. We're going to brush over some fan fiction history later, so we'll come back to this. This also falls into a gray area when creators want to publish and sell fan fiction in fanzine collections, which are fan-made magazines produced by amateurs. Many get around this issue by making pay for production, so they don't have so they don't actually make a profit off of the distributed fanfiction. You can find fanfiction today in a lot of places. There are plenty of fanfiction sharing websites to pursue. Popular choices include AO3, short for Archive of Our Own, fanfiction.net, and Wattpad. We will also return to these in our history section.
And speaking of the history section, we've arrived. Fanfiction as a distinctly recognized medium is modern, but I'd argue it's an old tradition. This is going to seem like a jump, but hang with me a minute. Sometime in the early 1300s, Dante Alighieri wrote The Divine Comedy, an Italian poem detailing Dante's trip through hell, purgatory, and heaven. He travels with Virgil as his guide. Yes, that Virgil, the one who wrote the Aeneid, until he reaches heaven where his wife becomes his guide. I can't apply the term fanfiction to the Divine Comedy because that would definitely be anachronistic, but I can point out that a lot of fanfiction conventions are present in the Divine Comedy. We have self-insert fics today, where authors insert themselves as characters, just as Dante appears as himself in the Divine Comedy. Some people insert real people into their fanfiction, just as Dante inserted Virgil into the Divine Comedy. Fanfiction can have one source or be a crossover with multiple sources. Dante combines a biblical afterlife with figures from Greek mythology, which puts the Divine Comedy in that same ballpark. All this to say, the roots of fanfiction are deep. Now we're moving on to fanfiction closer to how we know it today.
Today, we usually share and access fanfiction through websites and the internet, which I believe is one of the reasons it's become so popular. But before, it was originally most commonly shared on paper. During the 60s, for example, Star Trek fanfiction would be shared, often handwritten in binders, as a compilation of fanworks. This is an early example of a fanzine. Moving into the digital age, fanfiction was for a time primarily shared through emailing lists and fan sites. These fan sites were typically specialized for a specific fandom or relationship pairing. Today, they're much less common. Popular fanfiction websites now are usually a home for a variety of different fanfictions and fandom spaces to share, which makes fanfiction easier to find. One such website, called fanfiction.net, first launched in 1998, intending to be an online fanfiction archive. We're going to focus on two other websites that launched after fanfiction.net, Wattpad and AO3.
Wattpad started in 2006 primarily as a fanfiction site. Slowly over time, it's grown to host a majority of original works, and unfortunately that also includes ads. Now its main focus is publishing original works. The company has even partnered with big-name brands like Paramount Pictures to turn them into movies. This attracts many authors who might be interested in traditional publishing.
Wattpad was my first fanfiction website that I stumbled onto. I was a little bit not old enough to be into fanfiction.net. It's more, not a dead website, but it's not as popular as Wattpad and AO3 are today. But it was definitely interesting to see how Wattpad has changed since I first started using it. Because when I first was introduced to it, it was mainly fanfiction and fan creations. But now, Wattpad has become a whole lot bigger, getting brand partnerships with Paramount Pictures and publishing a lot more original content, which is interesting to see its evolution.
Oh yeah, definitely. Wattpad was also my first fanfiction site, so we have that in common. I remember downloading it for the first time on my Kindle Fire. I remember I was looking for just any app that would give me something to read, and I found Wattpad on accident. And I was definitely not really supposed to be on there. I was like 2 years below the age that you're supposed to be before you can sign up. But, it's fine. I wasn't scarred or anything, and I had a lot of fun. It was a very big thing to me, being able to read other people's work that wasn't just a published book. Like, fanfiction has definitely a reputation for being more poorly written than published works, and a lot of the times, the author, they don't know, all of the hyper-specific grammar rules that you're supposed to know before you can publish a book. but it also helped me see, like, it helped me begin to see where I could start to improve. Like, hey, I do that too. Isn't that cool? Or, ooh, look at that. You know, just it's a lot of fun to look at. It's like you see behind the curtain of what goes on when you're writing a book.
I definitely agree. Like, there's a varying degree of quality in fan fiction, but it's still really interesting to see what comes out of it. I've definitely found amazing fan fiction works that I think great prose writing, great quality, that I think, you know, they could definitely be published authors in the end. I definitely agree with that.
Yep. I love some of the really good fan fictions I found. I love a lot of the cringe fan fictions. Listen, if you want to write cringe, write the cringe. Cringe is dead. Have fun writing it and post it online. What is anyone gonna do about it? Oh no, how dare you have fun writing fan fiction? Grow up, you know? Moving on to AO3. AO3 is a nonprofit open resource digital archive that launched in 2009. AO3 is one of the more popular fanfiction sites today. It's got a very thorough tagging system, which is definitely a big reason why it's so popular. It is very organized, which is important because it is an archive of a lot of fanfiction. In 2019, it won a collective Hugo Award for Best Related Work, which was an experimental entry that recognized the works of fan creators.
Yes, AO3, well, it wasn't my first site. It's probably my favorite website. As Sierra said, one of the reasons is the tagging system, because you can specify exactly what you want to read if you're in the mood for something, you know, fun or, you know, cringy or whatever. Or if you want something more emotional. I love the tagging system of it. It's very well organized, and that's probably one of my reasons why I use it the most.
Okay, Mianna, why don't you tell us about the legal issues of fanfiction?
Yes, because as we said earlier, fanfiction falls into a gray area when it comes to copyright. There have been instances where authors, such as Anne Rice, who wrote the Vampire Chronicles, got into issues with fan creators. She was very well known to be strongly against fan fiction and felt that her characters, since they were copyrighted, belonged to only her, and that other people writing or making their own interpretations of those characters should not be happening. Allegedly, she tried to sue fanfiction.net. In the end, fanfiction.net did remove all works from Interview with a Vampire that had been published, and then they banned any new works being published based off of her works, just to keep out of any other issues. Though later on in her life, she did relent a little bit on her stance and said that people could do whatever they wanted to do, but she just would not interact with it. So she was not as strict about it moving on, but people would often put in their fix because of this at the start. I do not claim to legally own the copyright. Please do not sue for any fanfictions relating to the Vampire Chronicles. However, not all authors are against fanfiction. One popular author that I can think of, Neil Gaiman, is known to be very encouraging and interactive with fan creations, and enjoys the feedback and encourages people to engage creatively with his works.
Yeah, I definitely remember seeing those kinds of disclaimers all over the place. Like, I don't see them as much anymore, but I definitely remember practically every fic I would open would start off with some really dramatic, I don't have any money, don't sue me, you know, I'm just writing this for fun. I don't own the characters. I'm not trying to say I do. I think definitely one reason that a lot of authors have become more relaxed about their stance on fanfiction is because of how popular it's just getting overall. It's kind of hard to be like, no, don't write any fanfiction ever about my stuff, because there's kind of fanfiction everywhere. Like, movies are being made off of fanfictions. I mean, 50 Shades of Grey started off as a Twilight fanfiction. The characters were renamed for the movie and the book, the published book, so that it wouldn't infringe on the Twilight copyrights. And the After movie series was originally a Harry Styles fanfiction from Wattpad. Fanfiction is kind of moving up in the world popularity-wise. It's being turned into the very kind of media that it is riffing off of. Authors like Cassandra Clare and Rainbow Rowell started their writing careers as fanfiction authors before they published their own original works. As you can see, or should I say hear, fanfiction has grown a lot from where it originally started. Now, with all of this information gathered about fanfiction, it's time to discuss whether fanfiction is or is not a legitimate art form.
Alright, now that fanfiction has gained popularity and has become a lucrative way of publishing, would you consider fanfiction an art form? You may have an idea where we stand on this argument, but let us present you with a few of our opinions. So to start off, for how I feel about fanfiction as an art form, I believe that the art of writing prose is still an artistic skill that a fanfiction author is involved in. As we mentioned earlier, there is differing qualities of fanfiction, but I believe even if the prose is not, say, on par with the best of the best, it still requires skill to write. Even if you're already writing from pre-established characters in pre-established worlds that the source material is already created, there's a lot of skill that goes into that. And then another point that makes fanfiction its sort of unique art form is taking those established characters and world building and then transferring it into its own storyline, which there are instances where that exists outside of fanfiction. For instance, if someone was to adapt a book into a movie or into a play or different mediums, it requires similar skills, but it's different than fanfiction in a way, because fanfiction is creating its own story and not necessarily adapting it to a different medium. But there are similar skills to it. It takes a lot of understanding of the original work and the intentions of the author to be able to take those characters or that setting and make it into a story that is satisfying for the reader, because you can basically just make your own character and still label it as the original source's characters and make it into your own story, but at the end of the day, that's pretty much just an original work. A lot of people who read fan fiction are reading it because they enjoy the original source, and so they want some aspects of the fan fiction to be true to the original, be it the characters, certain aspects of the world building, and I think that takes a lot of skill, because it can be easy to fall into, I'm just gonna copy and paste the original but make it slightly different, or it can go the opposite direction where this doesn't really feel like the characters at all, they're named after it and it's got the title there in the tags. But I think that is definitely a few reasons why I believe fanfiction could be considered its own unique art form. And then another thing that I wanted to say is that the community around fanfiction is pretty unique, because there's a sort of feedback between the creators of fanfiction and then the viewers, with being able to comment, as well as a lot of times there's a lot of community spaces on social media, like Twitter for instance, where different fanfiction authors will come together and work together off of different ideas, which I think is definitely more unique to the fanfiction world, because in more traditional publishing, you don't really, yes, you do inspire each other and you will, give feedback on their work. It's a little bit different because it's still their work. While in fanfiction, it's two people that have an understanding of already established characters that they're working with, or a world that they both know. So I think that's another part that makes fanfiction unique. And if you want to go, Sierra, explain some of your opinions.
Trying to, even if I took away my personal bias, just taking a purely logical standpoint, fanfiction as a medium can do things unique to itself, which makes it not only, definitely a legitimate art form, but an art form distinct from other art forms. It is its own thing. Fanfiction doesn't have the same constraints of a published novel or a movie. There aren't really industry standards that they have to comply with, aside from tagging systems on certain websites like AO3. And it doesn't need to be profitable, it doesn't need to make money. And like we were talking about earlier, for legal reasons, it actually can't make money. So as a result, fanfiction authors have immense creative freedom and control. They can do things that the source material wasn't able to do for any number of reasons. So, for example, a fanfiction can delve into something like side character number 78. Maybe someone saw side character number 78 in the background of a shot and said, I like you. But there's no content about side character number 78 because they're side character number 78. So that person, that viewer who saw that side character, can take it upon themselves to write a really cool fan fiction about that side character, exploring their past, their motivations, their relationships, what they were doing in the shot, why they were in the shot. Basically, fan fiction serves to enhance the experience of the fans who enjoy the source media, but also want to see more. Fanfiction also, in a meta sense, does things differently from traditionally published books, such as the use of author's notes. A book might have an author's note at the start of the entire book, talking briefly about their work or their writing process, or even delivering a dedication. Author's notes in fanfiction usually appear at the start of not just the entire book, but at the start of chapters, and they're usually a lot more personalized. They're updated as the person updates the fanfiction. It's not usually all updated at one time. So it's sort of like a time capsule as to what was happening to the author or around the author while they were writing and publishing different chapters of the same fanfiction. Notes could explain why an update took longer than usual to arrive, what happened at their uncle's birthday party. It could even be that they're entering grad school and won't have as much time as they used to write fanfiction. Sometimes a fanfiction will return from the dead after 12 years and they'll be like, hey, sorry about that, back to the fic, with no more explanation than that. And they get back into the fic. Author's notes in fanfiction are different from the author's notes that you see in a published book. Fanfiction has similar tools to published books, but they're used differently. And so you can't say that they're the same thing. They have to be different from each other, which means fanfiction has to be its own legitimate art form.
Mm-hmm. And something I wanted to comment about your point when you were talking about how fanfiction can focus on certain characters. Another area that fanfiction can focus on is different plot lines, because usually when you're setting up a novel, there's certain rules that you follow by. You don't necessarily... Most publishers will tell you not to write a fanfiction about two characters sitting in a cafe enjoying a latte for 10,000 words, because usually that's not what sells. Mm-hmm. But in fanfiction authors will write that stuff because they know that there is an audience that will love it and enjoy it, to see those characters interacting in a setting and in a plot line that might not be traditionally used in regular media.
That is very true. Established media has to worry about efficiency in a way that fanfiction doesn't have to. It's just about enjoyment, and that makes it so delightful.
Mm-hmm.
Just have to be your favorite.
For me, one of them, especially when I was younger in middle school, was Tonks from Harry Potter series, because I loved her. She was one of my favorite characters, and I felt like she didn't get the story that she necessarily deserved, so I read a lot of fan fictions about her. That was the one I can think off the top of my head, but there's a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've got something slightly to the left of that is back to Naruto. It's always back to Naruto with me. She's not really a side character. She's one of the main characters, sort of, but Sakura from Naruto was done so dirty in the actual series.
I agree.
She is so mistreated, and she doesn't feel like she was written to be a full person. It always feels like she's a little flat to me. So I liked to read fan fictions that did her justice, and they were like, well, what if she wasn't just obsessed with Sasuke? What if she, had a whole personality? It's amazing. And so, that's just that. I loved that. I loved to look for something that would either flesh out a character who didn't get enough content to begin with, or basically like a fix-it fic where they go back and they're like, well, what if this was slightly to the left in a way that it is the personal opinion of the writer of the fan fiction is more enjoyable than how they wrote it in the original media.
Yeah, there's definitely certain works, I can't think of one off the top of my head, where I've definitely read fix-it fics for. Actually, one work was the Fairy Tale anime. I read a lot of fix-it fics for that story, and maybe not even fixing the ending of that storyline, but just doing a better overall plot kind of construction for that storyline with the characters that I really enjoyed. So I definitely find myself gravitating to those types of fics. Alright, we've said quite a lot, so let's wrap it up a bit. Fan fiction is a paradoxical state of relying on other media to exist, and standing on its own as a media form, having its own purposes, tools, and possibilities. This means fanfiction is not only a legitimate art form, but a distinct art form from even the media that inspired the fanfiction to begin with. We've made our arguments and said our piece, so we'll leave things there. Whether you're 10 years away from Ithaca or right at home in Gordon State College, we hope the Podyssey finds you well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. This podcast was written by and features Mianna Lotshaw and Sierra Spencer. Audio engineering, recording, and editing by me, Michael Sanders. Intro and outro music written by me, Michael Sanders, and Dr. David Jansen, who is also featured on guitar. Executive production by Noel Thrasher. Interim music titled Colorful Flowers, written by Tokyo Music Walker. And as always, Highlanders forward. Keep reading, gang.